Welcome back to the table. Ryan and I just played Blueprints of Mad King Ludwig. I don't know how many Mad King Ludwig games there are.
There's a few.
This
the third?
I think it is the third. There's some other ones. There's Between the Castles of Men, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
This is Blueprints. This is, for lack of a better way of putting it, the roll and write. But there's no rolling. There's no flipping. You're really kind of drafting.
It's a draft and draw. It's a draft and draw.
It's a draft and draw because you're not writing words either. You are drawing the rooms that you're drafting for your castle on a sheet of paper in front of you. And it's quite a sheet of paper. It's actually vellum paper, kind of see-through, kind of textured, because it helps bring out the colored pencils. But you're doing effectively a lot of the same things that you'd expect from the Mad King Ludwig series, if you will. But as we've just been discussing, it's a little bit more of a spatial puzzle.
Yeah, it definitely is. So if you're not familiar at all with the game, in the actual board game, you're drafting tiles and you're placing them in front of you. Everybody starts with a little foyer and you're building out from that by connecting different colored rooms. Every time you place a tile, you're connecting doors together. And as you close off rooms, meaning as you complete them and cover all the doors, you trigger a bonus for the room. Then, of course, you've got a ton of scoring tiles. Some of the rooms score in different ways. Some of the tiles and cards score in different ways. All of that is represented here. But the thing that you're not doing is taking tiles. In fact, there's no tiles at all in this game. It's just cards. Instead of drafting a tile and placing a tile in front of you, you're taking a card and drawing the symbol on your board. Now, there's a couple pros and cons that go within that, but I want to talk about one of the pros first.
Okay, go for it.
That it allows you to have some very unique shapes of rooms.
Oh, for sure.
That you would not have in the tile game, because in the tile game, they're stacks and they're all kind of the same. There's the small, medium, and large or whatever. In this game, there are a wide variety of just crazy looking rooms.
Rounded corners, all sorts of stuff.
Like angles and rounded corners and doors in different places. And so that does lead to, I think, a harder spatial puzzle than the base game, because you can't just take a tile and
well, not only
arrange
that,
it.
But you're also restricted on the sheet of paper that you have. Everyone has to draw their castle at the beginning within some dashed lines, and then there's spots around the edge that you can, as you play, by building certain types of rooms, expand the area in which you can place your rooms, because if you don't, it is very constricted. Yeah. And like Ryan said, the shapes of the rooms are very interesting, because very quickly you can find, oh, I only have a couple doors that I can even build off of, and all the rooms that just came out are giant.
Yeah.
So I might have to skip my turn, which is a thing you can do in this game. And we cannot teach this. There's a lot to go in. I will say, for a draft and write or a blank and write, there's a lot to remember in this game. Mechanically, what you're doing is not difficult, but there's a ton of different rooms that do a ton of different things. Yeah. Now, with that said, there's a nice player aid that really reminds you, but you do need to go through the rule book or have someone who's read the rules to understand some of the details about how all of those things work.
Well, yeah, every room gives you some kind of power, and you've got your little secondary sheet. So you have your sheet that you're drawing on, and then you have your sheet you're recording on. And as you complete rooms, meaning as you completely surround them, you color in a little dot, and then each one of those rooms has a flag that's a power. So you're coloring in the dot when it's filled, you're using the flag when you use the power. And of course, all of these rooms have different powers. Some of them give you access to scoring cards. Some of them give you extra turns and things like that. There's a ton of stuff you're trying to do when you're planning out your puzzle, but David's right. It is a very small area. It's different than the board game, where you can literally just build out your castle as far as the eye can see. You don't need to worry about space. You can make weird, wonky castles. This, you're building within the confines. Even as you kind of unlock these flags by playing green buildings, you're still only expanding your area by a little bit. So it is a far more constraining.
Yeah, but
than the base game.
It brings in a puzzle element
For sure.
that I don't think exists as much in the other games, because trying to fit those all together can lead to some very satisfying, also lead to some potentially frustrating moments where you're like, I can't make this fit, or, oh my gosh, that fits perfectly between these two rooms that I'd built, and it closes both of those off. It closes the one that I just placed off, and now I've got a lot of bonus actions that I can take, or bonus effects that I can employ to sort of manipulate things in your castle. But like I said, we don't want to teach, but on your turn, you're going to be taking one of these cards, drawing it in here. After you draw it, you're going to check to see if any rooms have been completed. It doesn't have to be the room you just did. By placing that room, more than likely you're going to maybe close off another previously drawn room, and then you mark that circle on your sheet. knowing that you'll have that bonus flag to incorporate. There are some other things that you can get. There's swans. There's swans on some of the cards you'll take. You'll see this card here has a swan, this one too. That's the only way that you can fill in one of the tracks here that gives you a moat. A moat's another thing you can draw, but only after you've gotten 4 swans. You're basically building all the things you'd expect in a castle, and all of them are going to have not only effects as you play, we've touched on a few of those effects, but they also have score at the end of the game. Some of them are just going to give you straight up score for however many rooms of that type that you've completed, and you'll just get 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 points for those rooms. Then things like the green rooms are going to have some unique scoring with all the empty spaces around them. So again, back to that puzzle, you're going to want to maybe build those green rooms off to themselves so they have as much white space around them. And then the moats are probably one of the more interesting ones. I can't imagine playing this game and not wanting to get at least a moat done. You draw a vertical or horizontal row as far as you can or want within the confines of your sheet. And then at the end of the game, every room that's completely behind that moat to one side of it is going to score points for you at the end of the game. So if you get 2 moats, you could actually double those points if you're crafty enough.
I mean, that is basically the entire teach.
That is the whole teach.
That is the whole teach.
We didn't
you did just teach it.
We didn't go into all the details.
No, not all the, but it is that simple. I mean, you are trying to fulfill some requirements, some bonus cards. You're going to get a royal decree at the start of the game. So yeah, there's a ton of ways to get points, not just on these sheets, but also with the cards. Also, the rooms you draft are points. So there's a lot. Yeah, there's just a ton of strategy.
Yeah, the end game scoring is significant. Yeah, there's a lot of points.
Yeah, I mean, we had high scores, like 190, 180. Like we had really high scores. So, but I do want to, because I wanted to kind of tie that into who it's for.
Yes.
Because this is one thing I want to say that this game really fulfills the premise. When you hear the term Blueprints of Mad King Ludwig, you do really feel that theme come through when you're taking the colored pencils and you're drawing the rooms. Like you do kind of get that vibe. Like I'm sketching out these blueprints. Like the sheet looks like a set of blueprints, and like there's some pre-printed squares and little doors that kind of help you guide. And so like I'm not a drawer. I'm difficult, but like the fact that you could kind of follow these patterns and everything, like it did kind of lead into a very satisfying blueprint drawing experience.
Yeah, and that's something I really enjoy because while I don't draw a lot, I do like being very careful and being a perfectionist with drawing these things. I always liked drawing on graph paper as a kid.
Yeah.
So drawing these things and making it look just so. Like I actually went to the trouble of getting a normal pencil to do the outline borders of my rooms just to make it look that much special. That's a really sort of, in a weird way, relaxing and zen experience. So this isn't associated with sort of like the balance of the game or anything like this. But this is a game that's going to appeal to people that just want to kind of chill, take their time, don't worry about coloring in while other people are waiting to move on to the next round. So, and I am going to jump over to who it's not for because it goes hand in hand with that. And oftentimes we try to avoid in these Just Playeds saying it's for these people and it's not for people not like that.
Right.
But I'm going to say it here because if you aren't a person who enjoys just kind of chilling out at the table, everyone taking their time, doing how they just want to do it just so, and you want to just like keep going like, hey, let's finish this game so we can play another game, this might not be for you because I think if you're going to play, particularly with like 4 people, inevitably there's going to be someone at the table who does want to play it like me. I played it with Alicia, too, the other night, and we both just, I don't know how long it went, but it was longer than probably the box said because we were both just kind of like being just so with our castles.
Being very particular.
If you're playing with 4 people, someone's bound to be there is like, come on, are you done with your castle yet? Yeah. So I think to some of those people, the game might feel a little tedious compared to sort of the other Mad King Ludwig games. But it's gonna be like sort of 2 sides of one issue there. Yeah. Some people are going to like it for that. Some people are not going to like it
I think that's the key. It's a little bit different from a lot of those games because it's 2 sides of the same sword. The other thing that people might not like, if you're a big fan of Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the entire like coin economy is out of this game. There's no money exchanging hands. There's no auction. Like none of that part of the game is here. So this is very simplified in that your turn is just drafting a card. There's no need to worry about, can I afford it or not? Which is something that people I think are really going to lean into. But then some people really like that aspect of like, okay, well that set of tiles is safe because I'm looking on the board and I see that nobody can afford it. Like that's not a thing that's going to happen. If you're first, you can just draft any of the 4 tiles. Taking that whole aspect of the game away definitely makes the teach easier, definitely makes the gameplay smoother, because you really are just drafting a card, and that's really it. Like, yes, you're triggering off some like bonuses, and those bonuses can combo. You can still get your extra turns. And so, like, it does still have that, but, like, at its base, it is a much, much simpler game.
Yeah.
Although, like you said, the puzzle is probably a little harder. So it's a weird kind of balance. It's very difficult to say who this game is for or not for, especially because it is tied in so closely to Castles of Mad King Ludwig. But some of the people that love that game are going to love that game for reasons that are absent from this game.
True. I do
that's
think
kind of a hard thing to describe.
I want to talk a little bit more about what I think they've done to replace some of that a little bit, not in the exact same way. But when Ryan said that these are drafted, that is true. But there are some decisions that go into the draft, not just related to what you're trying to do on your board, or maybe what you're trying to keep someone else from doing, because there can be some hate drafting here. But the other thing going on is all of the cards have a number here in the upper left-hand corner. Some of them also have the swans, but that number is going to range, I think, from anywhere from 1 all the way up to 8.
Yeah.
Now, those are points at the end of the game. You take an 8 card, you are going to score 8 points at the end of the game. However, the lower the number that you take determines the player order in the next round. So you are going to be thinking about that to some degree, because you're like, well, I don't really need a big room. I'll just take this little room, and hopefully on the next 4 cards that come, or the next however many cards that come up, depending on player count, you're going to get first pick. That is a pretty big decision factor in making that decision when you're taking a room. Now, it is secondary to, like, oh, I need another green room, or oh, I need another red room, or that room's really going to help me get this next bonus and make something happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely still a lot of strategy into while you're drafting the rooms, because, again, just like in Mad King Ludwig, the points matter, the abilities matter. Trying to compete for these 4 different in-game objectives potentially matter. Completing your decrees matter. Getting your bonus cards that trigger matter. There's still a lot that matters. The one last thing I would say that I don't even want to say that I was disappointed, because I wasn't, but I do think, like, I play these roll and writes or these flip and writes, and I see this giant sheet. I'm like filled with potential, and at the end of the day, like, I closed off 4 rooms.
Yeah.
And I was like, I didn't, and maybe that's just because I'm bad at the game, or like I didn't really know how to position it very well. But like give you room to like you could close off 6 yellow rooms. I mean, we even only saw 2.
No,
so
you're going to get a different mix of cards. Yeah. The way you set this game up is there's a giant deck of cards, and depending on player count, you're going to take a subset of those. So you might get a set for 2 players, 30 cards. You might not get any red cards. Yeah, like Alicia and I played, we had 1 red card. Today we had a ton of red cards. Yeah. So it's going to have a factor, and it also ties into a lot of your other cards. You might get a card at the beginning that says, oh, I score points for all my red buildings. I'll do that. And then no red buildings come out. That might be a little disappointing. On the flip side of that, though, it adds a massive amount of variety. So every game is going to feel very, very different. I do agree that some people will look at this sheet and go,
I'm one of those people. Ooh,
so I could finish red and rip purple. Like, oh boy, I wonder if I could ever finish like 3 of the 5 categories.
You're never going to probably finish 1.
You're barely going to finish 1, maybe.
I mean,
like, you'd have to really focus on that and get lucky with the cards that come out.
To play 6 buildings and then also close off the 6 buildings, that's tough.
But the game is not about that. The game is not about like, oh, I'm going to finish my purples. It's about doing with what comes out the most that you can. And I think that's what I like. I'm a tactical gamer, so I do like kind of going, okay, what do we have here? Okay, I'll pivot and I'll use that. And then that puzzle extends to like, oh, I could use that room. That'll get me this bonus. That lets me make this other thing happen. I really enjoy that aspect of the game.
A lot of combo potential.
Last thing I want to mention, something that I really enjoyed, and I don't know, you might have to remind me if the other games have this. A lot of the Royal Decree cards, some of them have scoring, but most of them do not. Most of the Royal Decrees are an ongoing ability that you'll have. For instance, mine, when I completed green rooms, it allowed me to open up 2 sectors of the expanded area instead of just 1. So it definitely guided me in like, okay, this is how I'm going to play. But that could contrast with one of the bonus cards I have, which was keeping the things locked, not expanding. If I didn't expand any of them, I would have gotten 25 points. So I was like,
a lot of points.
Well, I'm not scoring this bonus card because I have that decree. But those variable powers that made me feel like I had my own little thing, was that in the other games?
No, not like this.
Yeah, there's a ton of those cards too.
No, not like this.
And they can
which is
feel
cool.
pretty game breaking too. When you look through that after you play for the first time, you're like, oh wow, that would have made this game crazy.
Yeah, some of these would be. Some of these are really good.
So anyway, that's some of who it's for,
Yep.
some of who it's not for. It's kind of our thoughts on having first played the blueprints of Mad King Ludwig. Ludwig. If you have any questions about the game or how it's pronounced, make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and do our best.
Yep.
Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.